we are fortunate to have with us the Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, Minister Clarence Rambharat. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me on.
It is always good to have you here because the clarity we seek is what we get from you. Dr. James was with me earlier, and he spoke of ministers being responsible and speaking to the population about issues they wanted directly from the minister and not coming through a communication ministry. Fortunately, we have been able to reach you every time we have had questions, and I thank you for that. Let me start with this situation in Point Fortin. What is going on with this locust infestation?
Well, this is something that is seasonal. You find in Victoria County and St. Patrick County, those areas we face the locust infestation from time to time. In the Chatham area, we had an infestation in 2014, which was dealt with. We're currently dealing with one in Moruga and Point Fortin. And the feedback I've gotten from the officers who have been down there is that they've been able to bring it under control. They've been looking at the prospect of it spreading, looking at the neighboring areas, Labrie and Chatham in particular. And I believe that the ministry is working to deal with the infestation. I read something this morning about the non-responsiveness of the locusts to the chemicals that are being used. That is something I've asked about. And I'm also looking at a newspaper report from yesterday. I've asked for response from the technical people. The newspaper report is that this infestation has been taking place for the last 6 weeks, and I just want to assure myself as minister that that information is either accurate or inaccurate, and if it's correct, I would like to know why it's taken 6 weeks for it to be brought under control. As I've spoken on your program and elsewhere, the issue of structure in the ministry, the fact that the ministry is multi-layered, it takes a long time for decisions to be made, and especially in emergency cases like this, I want to know as minister whether we have a problem with being able to respond very quickly.
It is for that reason I know that a couple of folks took offense when you said, listen, we've got some square pegs in wrong holes and we've got to take care of it. It is not to say that one is calling out anybody inefficient. It's just to say there are ways we can tweak this system.
This is not a case of square pegs in round holes. This is something that I've recently started to look at, and that is this issue of layers in the ministry. And the fact that, for example, this issue came up in Point Fortin. There is an area office in Point Fortin of the ministry, and I felt that the area office should be the one focusing and attending to it with support from the other parts of the ministry. In this case, as it is now, the area office reports a regional office in San Fernando, and that office reports to an office in Port of Spain, and by the time you go through those layers of reporting, the problem gets out of hand, or the issue takes long to be resolved. It's a matter. It's not just this matter in land transaction and the payment of subsidies and other things to farmers. The layering and the unnecessary layers in the ministry is to my mind creating delays, and I have a responsibility to eliminate some of those layers so that things can happen quicker. And as I said about structure, regional county officers are supposed to be making high-level decisions in relation to their county.
The Point Fortin mayor said that he was comfortable because he was assured that it is being dealt with. One of the things I saw on social media, folks asked the question as to whether the chemicals in the spraying is harmful in any way to humans.
So far, my information is no. In fact, from time to time, we haven't done it recently, but when we have a major problem, we've actually done aerial spraying. Since I was in Caroni, we had been doing aerial spraying. So the chemicals that are used are meant to deal with the pests and, not bring harm to humans.
The Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, Clarence Rambharat, has taken off his schedule to spend some time with us this morning. Those who are having locust problems, there is a telephone number for them to call. The Ministry of Agriculture office can be called at 648-1426. That's 648-1426. 26 as far as these locusts are concerned. Anything further in that area, Mr. Minister? Because I do want to go into the area of fish and the fishermen who are still suffering because folks are still concerned about whether it is safe to eat the fish or not.
Oh, no, nothing more on the locust.
Nothing more on the locusts. All right, Mr. Minister, could you address that issue for me, please? Because a lot of folks, their way of living is, of course, turned upside down, and the populace, or equally importantly, would like to know: is it safe to go about buying fish, and do they have to stay away from all fish from in the Gulf?
Well, let me tell you this, Rennie. I saw a newspaper report with a headline, "Go ahead, eat fish," and that was attributed to me. And I've been very consistent in saying that the lab reports, the contents of the lab reports so far have not pointed to anything which suggests that the fish is unsafe. There's nothing in the reports that I have seen. But the testing continues. My understanding is that the EMA is reviewing more recent reports, and the EMA will be making a statement early in the week based on the latest testing. Of course, the government recognizes that there's been some hardship, and we do not have a history of compensating for loss of sales across the board. But we recognize that some of the fisher folk would have had problems in terms of within their household, and that is the reason why the government has made the $1 million fund available. The ministry has been identifying through a process of registration persons who would receive funding, assistance, and the ministry has been working this weekend to process and finalize some payments for fishermen in the Otaheite to Labray area. So there is some relief being provided. The testing continues, the work of the EMA continues, and so far, nothing in the lab reports have pointed to unfitness of fish for consumption caught anywhere in the waters of Trinidad and Tobago.
So with the information available to the Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, it is safe to go about buying your fish and go about your business, because nothing in the reports thus far has shown it to be endangering the health, well-being of citizens of the country. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's nothing which points to unfitness for human consumption. Of course, we know that we've had issues in the Gulf of Paria. I've spoken about this before. As a country that relies on hydrocarbon resources, it is not surprising that we have issues out in the Gulf from time to time, and that's a matter for the EMA to deal with, the IMA to deal with, and then the advice would come in terms of how do we deal with the issue of pollution out in the Gulf.
Commentators, opponents of the government, and some fisherfolk reportedly have said that the $1 million that's being offered as compensation or tied over money is insufficient. First of all, could you accurately categorize what this money is being put for and prioritize who it is meant to benefit?
Well, this money is meant to meet urgent and immediate expenses, and the government identified back-to-school expenses and household expenses. And that is what we're trying to meet now. This is not compensation for loss of sales. This is not compensation in the form that people would get when there's an oil spill or something like that. This is targeted to persons who are fishermen or vendors or people involved in the industry who can demonstrate that they have an urgent need for assistance, and the government is prepared to respond to that. It must not be confused with the compensation that is offered out of the energy sector when there is some oil spill or the other hydrocarbon issues. To go back to the Petrotrin oil spill issue, compensation was paid. It was paid in some cases. Fisher folk would have received compensation of $100,000 per individual. This is not what is contemplated in the distribution of this $1 million.
I was pretty clear on that, but as I said, it has been reported with the slant, with the twist, that this is intended to be a compensation as against a tide over. So I thank you for that clarity. Mr. Minister, I thank you very much. Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, Clarence Rambharat, thank you so much for taking the time this morning to address, one, the locust situation in Point Fortin, what the ministry is doing, and to give us that clarity on the fish, because I think folks need to know that they can go about doing their business and the nation can go back to eating the fish. And, of course, if the information comes out from the EMA that contradicts what we have heard before, that information we will pass to them, correct?
Yes, for sure.
Then
Thank you very much, and thanks to Trinidad and Tobago. Today I mark 1 year since my swearing in on September 11th, 2015, and I'm all set and ready and prepared to enter the second year of service to this country.
And we are thankful for that. I stayed away from asking you to grade the first 100 years because I don't believe in grading system, because it is a simplified way of dealing at a very complex thing called governance. Yeah. But I thank you very much for taking the time, sir.
Thank you very much.
You have a wonderful day.